Alright, I'm still in my 20s, but over the 8 years that I've been in this age bracket, I've made some pretty hefty financial mistakes. Today I'm going to tell you all about them and how to avoid them, so you can save yourself the trouble and do as I say, not as I do. Hello and welcome to the Ready Set Life YouTube channel. My name is Brittany and I'm a millennial financial coach who makes videos all about taking the fear out of finance. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy this video and subscribe with that notification bell turned on if you haven't already. I put out new videos every single Thursday and you don't want to miss them. I didn't really start paying attention to my financial health until a few years ago. In my mind, everyone was going to be in debt. Everyone was going to get a subpar job, and everyone was going to kind of be making it up as they went along in adulthood. I was totally cool with just tagging along in the middle of the crowd. But because of my nonchalant, I'll figure it out attitude towards money, I really wasted some precious time that I could have been using to get myself ahead. Hopefully you're watching this early enough that you can avoid the pitfalls that I did, or if you're at the end of your 20s or beyond, you'll be able to relate some of these mistakes and catch yourself if they're still happening to you. The first mistake I feel like I made was with school. And I don't mean getting my degree, although it could be debated whether that's really serving me or not now, but I mean funding my schooling. Everyone around me got OSAP, so of course I did too. And if you don't live in Ontario, those are the student loans given out by the provincial government. OSAP has a fairly low interest rate, or they did back then, and it's mostly easy to get approved. For me, I basically said to myself, I'm gonna take on as much debt as they'll give me, and let future Brittany deal with paying it off. I'm not saying that I totally regret this, because that mentality did actually help me a lot through the beginning years of paid education and being on my own, but I am saying that it was a mistake. Taking out loans and not even thinking about alternative options is stupid. I was stupid. There are tons of grants, scholarships, bursaries, whatever, that you can apply for as a student. I didn't even look for them. For me, the mental energy that it took to figure out all the paperwork and research involved with those outweighed whatever savings they would provide me. Now, you know yourself, so maybe that ratio turns out the same for you, but just consider it. The automatic plan shouldn't be student loans will cover everything and it's fine. The second mistake I feel I made basically all throughout high school and university was that I had no money plan. I thought about savings, but I never really looked at my expenses, so I never actually saved anything. I just bought whatever I wanted and lived paycheck to paycheck. This was super irresponsible, and at the time, I kind of knew it. I basically said to myself, oh, one day you'll get it together and it's fine. Thankfully, nothing major happened where I suddenly needed an influx of money, but something like that could have easily turned my world upside down. I was living on the edge, and when you're a student or just young in general, that kind of risk seems okay. You're in that transition period between being taken care of by your parents and taking responsibility for yourself. So you're in and out of that mindset that your parents are always going to be there for your safety net. But there's a certain point where you realize it's not fair to keep them tied up with my junk. And I really am on my own now. The sooner that you think about your finances as a responsibility and something that you actually have to manage, the better off you'll be for your future. I'm not saying that you have to skimp out on those party years or that fun time where you're kind of allowed to be an irresponsible mess. But I am saying just think about what you're doing. You got bills, so make sure they're paid. You got a paycheck from that part-time job, so make sure you know where it's going. Stick part of it in a savings account that you can't touch. And look into robo-advisors and start investing, even a tiny bit of it for retirement. Just do something active instead of just ignoring it like I did. A secondary consequence from this ignoring my money problem was the interest and fees. I have wasted hundreds of dollars on fees and interest. From the time that I was maybe 17 to 23, I probably overdrafted my account at least 3 times a year, sometimes multiple times a day. And if you want to know how that happens, check out my video explaining how overdraft works. I'm gonna link it up in the cards there. Seriously, it was a $45 charge every time I did that, and $5 per day for every negative balance that I had in my account. Sometimes I wouldn't notice for a week, and often I would have the money available in my savings account, but overdraft my checking account and not realize it. I was paying so many ridiculous fees while the money was actually sitting in my account to pay it off. Since I didn't have a money plan, I never knew how much was in my accounts, which accounts it was in, or what bills I had to pay out of it. Everything was a total mystery, and I just went with it. With my current type A crazy organized personality, I think back to those days and just go, what the heck were you thinking? I can't even believe I did that. It cost me tons of money, and I never once asked for it back. Sometimes calling the bank will reverse some of those fees, and I didn't even try. Don't do this to yourself. Actually read the contracts that you sign. Know when interest is being charged and when fees are happening. If you don't understand what you're signing, ask. Keep yourself informed and even just a little organized. I didn't start retirement savings until I was well into my financial journey. I didn't think about retirement. I didn't even care about retirement. I didn't understand the gravity of how much you actually can gain by starting early. Take it from me. Whatever age you are, start saving now. Even if it's just $50 a month. Put something away so that you can get a tiny bit of those advantages. I'm gonna leave a retirement calculator linked in the description below. Play around with it and you'll see that starting to save now is actually going to change your entire future. I wasn't incredibly late with it, but I really wish that I had done this sooner. My first job out of university was a job that I got from a co-op placement that I had had during my school years. I was still working part-time with them throughout my schooling, and they just happened to lose their top person right as I was graduating. So they offered me the position, and I accepted the job because it was a great opportunity. But here's the mistakes I made. I didn't negotiate anything. The person I replaced was making $35 an hour, and I only made $25. Up until that point, I had only made $16 an hour at my highest paying job. So I thought, well, geez, that's a great deal. And I thought that the adult that I was replacing had more experience than me and therefore justified the huge cost difference. I also didn't negotiate the hours, which were part-time and not actually enough to do the tasks I was responsible for. And I didn't complain about the title demotion. The person before me was called executive director, which, if you know anything about charitable organizations, is literally the person responsible for everything at the top of the food chain. It's equivalent to CEO in the corporate world. I got all of the responsibility of that title, but instead they demoted me to administrative manager. Looking back and knowing what I know now, I was completely undervaluing myself. Frankly, I did a better job in that position than he ever did. I had fresh and updated skills, and I really revolutionized the way that the organization ran itself. I'm proud of the work that I did there, but I should have fought for more. I had this imposter syndrome of thinking that I wasn't skilled enough to be the boss of the other adult people that were working at this agency. I was 22 years old, and at my first real job, I felt completely out of place and not ready to handle any of it. Take it from me. If they've offered you the job, you deserve it. So fight for what you're worth. In the minimum wage world, we can't choose our salaries, and we kind of feel lucky once we get into the real workforce where those earning numbers just seem astronomical. In these jobs, they expect you to negotiate your salary, especially if you think you're going to stay at that company for more than a year. The entirety of your career there will be coming from that base salary. All of your raises, all of your promotions, they'll give you a percentage increase from that initial salary. If you undervalue yourself from the start, you're screwing yourself. I want to talk more about this. So I'm going to be making a video in the next few weeks on the importance of actually negotiating at your job. So let me know in the comments down below your experiences with this, or if you have any specific questions that you want me to cover. Up until my fourth year of university, I was pretty good at keeping money off of my credit card. I had a lot of debt from student loans, but I generally paid off my cards, other than maybe like $100 or so every month. However, this all changed when I moved into my current apartment. During the first 3 years of school, I lived basically in student housing that was already furnished for me. I didn't need to buy a bed frame or a mattress or any of those other big apartment expenses. It was great because I saved a lot of money, but also not great because everything was super ugly and boring. So when I got the chance to move up to an unfurnished space, I was incredibly excited. I got my own room to deck out in the decor exactly how I wanted. Now, the apartment I moved into was a 2-bedroom with my roommate and I. We had a kitchen and a bathroom, but no living space. And usually I like to have guests over. So I wanted to make my bedroom a bedroom and also a living area to hang out in. And that means I pretty much doubled my furniture list. And I went a little crazy with it. I mean, I shopped at IKEA, so it wasn't like I was making a big bougie makeover, but I did buy everything all at once and charged it to my card. I spent approximately $2,000 that I didn't have furnishing my apartment. And from then on, there was always a balance on my card. And that mistake caused this kind of mindset shift in me, where it was then acceptable to have a balance on my card. And I started putting other things on my card. And by the time I sort of realized what I was doing, I had amassed a little over $5,000 on that card. I was tricking myself into thinking, oh, well, it's my apartment debt, so like I needed to spend it. But I've calculated it, and the original apartment spend, which again, I didn't need to do, was that initial $2,000. And I just wasted an extra $3,000 on crap that I don't even remember. If you're also doing this right now, catch yourself. Be honest about what you're doing and take responsibility to fix it. It took me 3 years to pay that card off. Imagine if I hadn't done that. If I had let it go and waited until the balance was higher, until I was paying way more interest. I basically wasted 3 years of time fixing a mistake that I could have completely avoided if I actually thought about what I was doing. I'm glad that I learned that lesson, but it kind of sucks to think about that. So I have this little problem where when I get the motivation to do something or to start something new, I get obsessed. And I have a pretty wide array of interests that ebb and flow, so it often leads to quite a lot of money wasted on hobbies that I never pursue. In my 20s, this basically amped up to 100. In 2013, I decided to learn the violin. I always thought that it would be really awesome to do, but if I'm honest with myself, I don't have the discipline for repeated practice of anything. So I never actually learned it. Of course, when I decided to do this, I was amped, so I got a teacher for like $50 a lesson and decided to pick the payment option where it was more expensive to rent the violin, but you actually got to own it in the end if you kept it up and stuck with the actual payments. So I now still own this $350 violin that is super dusty and terrible that I haven't taken out of its container since 2014. In 2015, I figured out what those super adorable charms that I was buying were made out of and decided that I would become a polymer clay artist. And no, I didn't just buy a few starter kits to try it out. I bought an entire 50-piece clay set with extra materials and accessories. I've since made 3 clay figurines over the years. 3. And I probably spent over $150 on the supplies. I also got super into nail art, and this one I stuck to a little more, but still, I now own enough nail polish to start my own salon. These are just a few examples. I got more, believe me. But I think the lesson here is to understand your personality. I've learned that I need to take a big break before spending money on any of my passions. I can't trust that initial motivation or feelings of excitement when I get an idea. Start to think about the way that you spend money. Go back into your accounts and just see where things aren't serving you in the long run. Maybe you buy a lot of cheap clothing that you never wear, or go out to experience a meal at restaurants that you can barely even remember afterwards. Whatever it is for you, catch it now. The worst mistake that you can make is ignoring all of these little signs and end up unhappy because you're not actually spending on the things that you actually value. I'm gonna link a few videos down below, one on impulse spending and the other on overspending in general. It's not the same thing, but those videos do have some great techniques that you can use to figure this out or fix this mistake. So those are the biggest mistakes that I've made with money so far in my 20s. I hope that it was informative for you, or at least entertaining to hear about all of my failures. Let me know in the comments down below if you've ever made a money mistake that you totally regret and how you overcame it. If you like this video, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Next week's video is all about emergency funds, so make sure you also turn on the notifications for this channel so that you don't miss it. Until next time, I'm wishing you great financial health. Bye!